All right, welcome to the SnydeReport podcast. I am your host, Gary Snyder. My wife, my better half, is not with us today. She's a little under the weather. But our guest today is Congressman Andre Carson. Congressman, welcome to the SnydeReport.
What an honor. Thanks for having me.
Well, first of all, before we get started, I do want to thank you. You have been a longtime supporter of the SnydeReport, a supporter of the podcast. And I guess I should thank Robin Winston, too, because he's been integral in getting us rolling and getting us going here. But thank you for taking time out of your day to speak with us.
What an honor. Thank you.
Well, Congressman, you've been back in session. We have a new president. There seems to be a little bit of chaos happening. As a congressman representing most of Marion County, how do you as a congressman differentiate between the noise that's coming out and what's actually happening?
Well, that's a great question. I think that a lot of it is political trolling. I think that Trump is a masterful troller, but he also understands symbolism, and symbols matter. I think when he makes these executive orders, he's trying to define his legacy. We're told that all presidencies are defined by their first 100 days. So he's certainly trying to define his presidency. And I think even taking down lettering from federal buildings, shutting down websites, though it's not substantive as such, it still has great symbolic value to those viewers or his supporters that he's changing things, disrupting DEI, eliminating DEI. He's trying to give reassurance to an electorate that wants to go back to some mythical America that never existed. Now, what's unfortunate is that a lot of farmers are being impacted. A lot of Hoosier farmers are being impacted. A lot of people who supported Donald Trump are being impacted because of his executive orders and his policy agenda, when in fact, a lot of farmers, particularly Hoosier farmers, benefited when Democrats had control. We were able to pass the Inflation Reduction Act, which in turn was able to help a lot of farmers. So, the MAGA Republicans have lied to the very people who elected them. And Donald Trump promised to lower costs for American families. He lied. And, the House Republican budget scheme is endorsed by Donald Trump, designed to help Elon Musk. It cuts Medicaid, it undermines veterans benefits, and takes food away from children and seniors. And it's giving tax breaks to billionaires and big corporations.
When we take a look at what he is doing when it comes to slashing funds for NIH or USAID, you can go down the line. How does that affect Hoosiers that aren't getting the resources that they were promised, whether it's a not-for-profit, whether it's the city or county government or the state government?
Well, that's a great question. I've already spoke to heads of local nonprofits and NGOs, and they're deeply concerned. A lot of nonprofits fill in and they do the serious work, the work that local governments, state governments, and even federal governments are unable to do. So as a result, they get grant funding to help their entities as well as philanthropic efforts to fill that void. And if we don't have those NGOs filling that void, then it's going to have an absolute dire consequence, not only on our local governments, but our local society. DOJ claims that Social Security payments are wasteful and they should be cut. And the Trump administration is basically trying to steal your and my taxpayer dollars to give more money to billionaires. I mean, it's asinine. They also want to impeach judges who are trying to uphold the law by blocking these very unethical and unconstitutional actions. This is the richest cabinet in history. President Trump's Commerce Secretary set a record for the most expensive house sale in D.C. history. I'm not mad at that, but I think we have to look very closely at seeing the very richest people in the world. They're effectively now running our government at the expense of normal Americans. I'm going to be speaking out, calling out President Trump's lies, and I urge all defenders of democracy to do the same.
How do you do that as a congressman when you're not in power right now? And
that's a wonderful question.
What do you do? What do you do to encourage people to speak up?
No, that's an important question, Brother Gary. I just had a town hall. We just held a town hall a few days ago. We had a record number of 800 plus people attend, which was such a blessing. We've been urging people to speak out, to contact their representatives, contact their senators, and urge them to push back, and even urge them to push back on any cuts to so-called entitlement programs, any cuts against Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And as we're negotiating, we're hoping that we can flip a few Republicans. There are a lot of Republicans who want to do the right thing, but they're afraid of being primaried by Donald Trump. I've also demanded a meeting with the acting Secretary of Education. They refused to meet, and so did the Department of Treasury. The Department of Treasury actually refused to let many of us into the doors. And I sat on the Financial Services Committee at the time when many of us helped to create the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau during the economic downturn. As a part of that, we also fought hard, many of us, particularly those of us in the Congressional Black Caucus, to create within the CFPB the Office of Women and Minority Affairs. And so I won't be deterred, neither will my colleagues, but this is a shared enterprise. It's not about electing someone and having them do all the work. The folks on the ground, average everyday citizens, have a responsibility to not only hold us accountable, but to hold this administration accountable as well.
You know, we do this podcast from our kitchen table.
I love it.
Simply because kitchen table issues matter. Again, you talked about the noise versus what's actually happening. They're going through the government. They're cutting tens of thousands of jobs, government jobs that average working Hoosiers have, that put food on their table, that pay their car payment, to send their kids to school, make their mortgage payment. So what do you say to those Hoosiers that are affected by these job cuts? And it's kind of ironic that the richest man in the world wants to cut jobs of working class Hoosiers that that money does go pay the rent or the mortgage and the car payments.
No, that's so important. I think that there is a place to talk about austerity, to talk about reeling in bureaucratic excess. We can't rely on agencies to self-regulate or police themselves. We know this. That's why we have inspector generals, of which, President Trump got rid of. But, Democrats, we're shining the light on the unlawful abuses of power to hold this administration accountable. And I think it's important. We're trying to subpoena Mr. Musk, but it has been blocked by our Republican colleagues. We're going to keep up the pressure. In the courts, we're supporting dozens of lawsuits by impacted citizens and federal workers who I've been speaking to every day, dozens of them every day, and recipients of services who've been cut off. They're calling our offices. We're talking to them. I just spoke to folks from TSA yesterday. I spoke to folks from FDA who've received these awful emails. And it's been encouraging, though, I must say, Brother Snyder, to see so many federal judges do the right thing to block Trump and Elon Musk's power grabs. But legislatively, my colleagues and I are introducing the Taxpayer Data Protection Act to keep Mr. Musk out of your and my data. We only need 3 Republicans to join us and get this bill passed. And I've also demanded accountability from the administration. President Trump's executive orders freezing hiring, grants, and contracts have been successfully challenged in court and are still pending. And this is critically important because many Indianapolis organizations and Hoosier organizations, for that matter, that receive federal funds have been really in limbo. To your earlier point, this has caused unnecessary turmoil.
Now, when I went to high school back in Frankfurt and went to college at Ball State,
Yes, sir.
I learned that Congress appropriates funds. The president signs the bill, and those funds are appropriated to these different agencies by law. Now, I'm sure the president has some discretion over some of those funds.
Sure.
But when you see a president that tries to rule by executive order, whether it's birthright citizenship, which my mother was born in England. So,
Oh, wow.
Is my birthright citizenship threatened? Probably not, because I'm the wrong color. And when you see him trying to dictate by executive order, what are your thoughts on this, and how does Congress get back control of the appropriations?
That's such an important question. I have to give the founding fathers credit as complicated as they were. We're all complicated. They created three separate equal branches of government because they anticipated. They had a reference point from what happened back home. They didn't want to repeat this. They didn't want to have a tyrant in office. They didn't want to have an oligarchy. They didn't want to have a monarchy for that matter. What we're seeing already, I think, is an indication of what could happen with power gone unchecked. They've deliberately, this administration, have attacked federal workers. They fired inspector generals, prosecutors who prevent fraud and abuse. They've created so much chaos and confusion. You don't notice that Mr. Musk is boldly canceling the contracts of his competitors and giving them more money. So you don't notice an unelected billionaire is running things rather than the president. That's problematic. It's a distraction to get us away from the fact that skyrocketing inflation and the price of eggs. I had to go to 3 grocery stores, thank God for Kroger, to find some eggs the other day. Even Waffle House has had to raise their prices because of eggs. And, it's important that I think we stay clear-eyed and not be distracted by political theater. Folks who are in Marion County or Vigo County or Lake County, Vanderburgh County are just as impacted as my good buddies in Clinton County, where I used to work when I worked for the state for 9 years. There's some good folks there. Yep.
So you're familiar with the hot dogs then?
Listen, absolutely. I mean, you can't go to Frankfurt without doing it. I mean, I used to work in, I had 22 counties. So I sat on the local board there and I chaired the board for several years. I'd go to Clinton and then my next stop, it was Tippecanoe in Clinton, or sometimes it was Boone in Clinton.
Yeah.
And then I'd go to Zionsville in Clinton County. But I've spent a lot of time at the American Legions there and some of the Elks Lodges and downtown. They've really developed Frankfurt. It's a wonderful community, and the diversity is growing in Frankfurt. It's a great community. Great community.
And your first stop when you hit Frankfurt, at least mine when I go back to visit now, is the Milky Way, the Milky Way. So
the Milky Way, yeah. Well, you have to get outside of Marion County to appreciate a Coney Palace, to appreciate a Dog and Suds. What you know about that? Yeah, that's good stuff right there.
I was a lifeguard in high school, and most of my paycheck, all $3.25 an hour.
Yeah,
I'm probably have part ownership in the Milky Way right now.
That's right. That's a great investment. Hey, what do you know about Arnie's?
Oh, God, I was a Pizza King. I love Pizza King. I'll still drive and get Pizza King.
Yeah.
But when Arnie's opened up, the Pizza King in Frankfurt shut down. A good friend of mine passed away. He owned it. But Arnie's came to town, and they're almost just as good.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to love Arnie's.
Yeah. We'd go to Arnie's, and then sometimes we'd slide down over. I don't know if you've been to Thorntown to know about Stookies. What do you know about Stookies?
I've been there. Matter of fact, I remember Thorntown when it had the amusement park there back in.
Wow. Oh, that's deep.
So I had a friend that worked there, and he would sneak us in, and statute of limitations is over now.
Yeah, man, it's all good.
But so just to wrap things up here, I know you're very busy and got more important things to do. But going forward, what do you tell our listeners that what they should be doing, and how do they not get discouraged when they see so much noise happening on social media, in the media, and not get discouraged about what's going on, and knowing that people like you are at work, the courts are at work trying to stop this borderline dictatorship?
Well, I just want to encourage constituents who have been outraged, who have been giving congressional offices like ours and others feedback. We've been hearing from folks, not just from Clinton County, but other counties across the state, that our office, along with Frank Mervan's office, has been the most responsive, and that's encouraging. I'm energized by the outpouring of comments from our constituents. We've connected with over 5,000 people who contacted our office in the last week to express concerns for their democracy. People are paying attention. We're also encouraging folks to email us, detail incidences of what they've experienced through emails, and just keep a record so we can be better advocates, especially when it comes to our representatives on the Republican side. There are a lot of Republicans who come to me quietly, and they're expressing frustration. They're afraid. But if you have the people with you, you shouldn't be afraid. God is in control, but I'm really concerned about what's happening at our state house. I think Governor Braun is trying to replicate what Trump is doing federally. We can't let it happen, but I'm just encouraging people to stand up and keep their feet on the necks of the administration and state government.
Last question for you before we let you go. I know President Trump isn't watching this. Probably none of his minions are. What's your message to President Trump right now as he tries to do what he's doing?
Well, I think President Trump, contrary to what a lot of people think, he's smart. He's very smart. Now, he's not the kind of smart that Democrats probably lean toward, and I think it's hurt us. We tend to be so policy driven. We're talking about subsection B when the American people just want 3 clear talking points. And Trump has mastered clear messaging. Erroneous, yes. Fear driven, yes. Hateful, yes. Provocative, absolutely. But he understands not only the attention span of the American people, he understands that Americans, they say the average American reads at a 6th or 7th grade level. That's okay. But he messages to them. My message to President Trump would be, think about your legacy. Forget about taking care of your billionaire friends. Think about your legacy. And if you're a patriot, as you purport to be, and I believe you to be, understand that you're hurting the very people who elected you into public office. Even those people who were once Democratic Party loyalists, they've crossed over and voted for you to give you a second chance. Don't ruin it with your provocations in theater, sir.
Congressman Carson, thank you very much.
What an honor. Thank you, brother.
All right, have a great day.
You too.
You're listening to the SnydeReport podcast. I'm Gary Snyder, and again, we want to thank our sponsor, Robin Winston, as he helps make all this possible. Thank you, Congressman Carson, and we'll talk again soon.